For about 20 years or so, there's been something of a retro revival movement in the auto industry.
We've seen brands return, MG for example, back in Europe. We've seen multiple retro-themed vehicles, 500e, the Mini,
The Renault 5.
and now we've got something else.
And as with so many other retro-revived brands and models in recent years, this one is available exclusively as an EV. Meet the Volkswagen ID Buzz. That's ID space BUZZ. Or if you're in America, ID BUZZ.
It has been available in Europe for a while, and you might be wondering, why are we driving it now? Well, finally we have a variant, because in Europe you can have short wheelbase, you can have a commercial variant, but in the US we get this one, the long wheelbase.
Which is not available in a commercial variant. It's just a people carrier, because for some reason Volkswagen North America doesn't think that, well, anybody in North America, and that includes Canada, actually wants a microbus like the old microbuses. But can this actually evoke the feelings of Alice's restaurant? Can you fit in your shovels and rakes and tools of destruction?
Let's find out.
behind.
So before we get started today, I am wearing a mask.
You are?
Yeah, it's very fashionable. It's really just for looks. No, I have had a cold for a few days, actually about a week, and then a cough following it. I don't want to give Nikki anything, but I did want to drive this.
Yeah, you were very insistent on coming down for this, but you were a healthcare worker in your other job, and you were a very kind person, and masking when you are sick is the gold standard. Everybody should be doing it. Also, if I appear not like my normal self today, it's because I too had a fun weekend. I managed to slice my toe open on a paving slab, don't ask. Had to go to the hospital. My toe has been glued back up. I am okay, but I'm in a moderate level of pain right now. I also got a tetanus jab, which means my left arm feels like it's got like 20 pounds attached to it. But we're not talking about us, we're talking about this lovely little vehicle. Do you want to go on a road trip, Kate?
In this? Yes. Yes, I do.
So the original Volkswagen microbus was iconic. It was around for a really long time. In fact, long after it stopped being made in Europe, they continued to make it in Brazil, I believe, for a while. And you sometimes do, to this day, see more contemporary Volkswagen microbuses driving around. We see a lot of the original rear-engined ones, the air-cooled ones. And when this was announced, it was a very clear acknowledgement of Volkswagen's heritage and a call from the company to go back to, I guess, simpler roots. The idea of making vehicles that were very good at what they did, that were not too fancy pants, and were capable of great versatility. And I think that's what we've got with this vehicle.
I think so. I think there have been multiple vehicles that have been reborn. You know, the 500, the Beetle, when they brought that back. And I don't really feel like any of the other ones have actually had quite as much weight on them as such an iconic vehicle. And I say that because I know the Beetle is a super iconic vehicle. I know the 500, the Mini, they all have a certain cachet, a certain style, a certain experience that you associate with them. But this in particular has lasted in a way that those vehicles haven't. I still remember as a teenager that there was a street in London where you could go and buy a used bus that had probably been around the world once already so that you could go and take it around the world. It's a vehicle that has remained really part of the fabric of society, even though they've stopped making it, in a way that I don't feel like the Mini or the 500 or the Beetle did. Like they persisted a long time, but not in that same way.
And when you got into the original, Volkswagen microbus, there was this feeling of airy openness, flexibility, especially if you ever sat in a camper van variant with the pop-up roof. I get that same airiness here in the cabin. Obviously, as is normally the case, we have been given a higher trim spec version of the ID Buzz for review. But interestingly, it's not the most expensive ID Buzz variant. Normally, we'll get the one with all the bells and whistles. This is the first edition of the ID Buzz, but it's the rear-wheel drive variant, not the all-wheel drive variant. Yet, it still manages to impress.
It does. Quite often when we get the rear-wheel drive variant, it is pedestrian. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
And that's being kind.
Most people who are driving a vehicle as their daily driver, they don't need the kind of performance that a lot of the vehicles that we see have. And I very much respect that most of the people on this channel will watch us drive the sportiest all-wheel drive variant, and then they'll go out and buy the rear-wheel drive base trim. This manages to be really very respectful. Like, yes, it doesn't punch you in the gut. And honestly, I do not want it to. It is a camper van.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not.
It doesn't have the... But you get my meaning. It's a minivan. I don't want something that's going to kick me in the gut and then roll over.
The original bus, you sat over the front wheels, literally.
Yeah.
Right? So the front wheels are kind of in line with your hip bones almost, because the original microbus had that flat front.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because of crash test requirements, that is no longer allowed as a design. It would be very difficult to design a vehicle with that blunt nose and get it through modern crash test standards.
Yeah. They certainly weren't the greatest vehicle to take on the freeway. And they weren't something that you wanted to throw up a mountain pass.
They had a lot of body roll.
They had a lot of body roll.
That's a nice way of putting it.
And they were kind of a little twitchy. Mm-hmm. This doesn't have those characteristics. This drives more or less like a car. It stays remarkably flat, even if you push it. And I have had a little bit of a chance today to push it, and let's just say I'm really, really impressed with how well it took that behavior. Like, yes, it's not there begging you to thrash it around corners, but if you're going down a mountain pass, this thing will take you around it. This thing will just handle it with aplomb.
And we've also experienced, while I've had it, how great this is at parking. We came back yesterday from a trip to the coast, and I pulled in. We went the back way to my house, which means that I entered into my driveway from the opposite direction to what I normally would. Yes, I'm fancy, I have two driveways. And when I pulled up, I went to back into the parking space that we'd set aside for it, because the charge port door is on the right rear of the vehicle. And my wife was like, no, you're just going to have to back up, do a J-turn at the top of your driveway and then come back in. And I'm like, no, we can do it. And we did it. The short, stubby front nose combined with really well-geared steering and lots of freedom of movement for these front wheels meant that I was able to kind of perform a decent parking maneuver. I think it was like maybe 5 little shuffles to get it back into the space, which is actually less than it would have taken me in my Chevy Bolt, which is shorter. And the Chevy Bolt's known for having a decent turning circle. Obviously, if you're watching this, you might be going, yeah, but the ID buzz has been around for a long time. Why are you only now reviewing it? And the answer is, it's been on sale in Europe for a couple of years now, but it's only just gone on sale here.
Yeah, and that, I mean, on the one hand, that's disappointing. But on the other hand, I remember the software when we got the ID4.
And it wasn't great.
Oh, you're generous. And then a couple of years after we had the ID4, I took an ID3 out for a little spin in England, and it was better. Mm-hmm. And again, now, this feels like a much more refined vehicle. It feels like they've got this pretty much together. It's still very Volkswagen. It's still multiple presses for things that I really want to be one press, and it's still capacitive buttons.
Well, Volkswagen has said that it's going to remove capacitive buttons on a lot of its vehicles and replace them with buttons. I think that's the direction everyone is going, because they've realised how much people hate them.
Yes, and they're a safety issue.
I genuinely think that too. But the thing that frustrates me somewhat about where we're at with this vehicle and its launch in North America is that Volkswagen made a decision not to offer this as a short wheelbase in North America. So in Europe, you can get a long wheelbase or a short wheelbase. You can get a commercial van or you can get a passenger van. Here,
this is your choice.
This is your choice. Now, you do get a choice of trims, right?
Yeah.
Volkswagen is now kind of really doubling down on the two-tone paint job. That's primarily the only choices. You'll get a choice of different two-tone paint jobs, but over here it's now basically two-tone paint options of different varying colours. And you can get a 6-seat or a 7-seat variant over here. So if you get the 6-seat variant, you get second row captain's chairs, which are basically like the ones I'm sitting in right now with the armrests. I just want to call out the fact that these armrests are adjustable, so they flip up, and then there's a little button underneath, and you can actually move it to the position that you want, which I love.
That's really nice.
It's really comfortable. There's an adjustable leg cushion, so you can move your seat out to have more support for your legs. The automatic entry and exit function on the driver's seat is a bit kooky, because I find that when I get out of the vehicle, it moves back, but then when you open the door, it moves forwards. It doesn't wait for you to get in and then move forwards, which seems a little bit weird. I'm used to opening the door, getting in, and then when I close the door, the seat moves forwards. But that's a very fancy schmancy thing that really is not essential for anyone. So you can't get the short wheelbase version over here. And I'm really disappointed at that, because this has a starting price of about $58,000.
Yes, and it's not eligible for whatever will remain of the federal tax.
It's not eligible for those, and our illustrious...
Although you might still get state tax credits
You might
in
get
the US.
state tax credits. Our illustrious dear leader has decided that this is part of the import tariffs as well.
Yes.
So it gets 25% thrown on top of those figures for imports, which almost immediately makes this vehicle not as price competitive as it should be.
And I mean, I think we have to say, Volkswagen could choose to build this here, but why would they? Because yes, you could build it here, but it's probably not going to sell in massive numbers even if they do. And if they sell it north of the border, if they build it in the US, then it's subject to the reciprocal tariffs that Canada have put on in response. So then they would be in a similar situation to Subaru, where it's actually better for them to make the vehicles outside the US and ship them to Canada.
This, people, is why politics matters. We constantly have people complaining at us that we're being too political in our videos and blah, 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 blah. But politics actually does impact this industry in a really dramatic way. And, the 25% import tariffs on foreign-made cars impacts the marketability of a vehicle like this. And
it's such a shame.
Because it is, as I'm sure we will heap praise on this multiple times, it is a great vehicle. It doesn't feel... I think the reason why I like this so much is it doesn't feel ostentatious.
It doesn't. It also... There's this thing that people think that SUVs are super practical, super useful, super versatile. And they're really not. They're sort of they're almost as good as an estate, but not quite. But they look cooler.
Yeah.
This is super practical. If you've got kids and you need to take them to football, basketball, whatever, hockey, then it actually has room to take lots of kids and their stuff. If you need the carrying capacity, this actually is a sensible shape, so you could put things in it. It is good for going out to the ocean, it's good for going camping, it's good for all the things that the original microbus is good for, this is good for. The thing that it's really good for that we don't get because it's the US is that we don't get the commercial variant, so small, medium-sized businesses
couldn't do it.
Get it. Sorry, that's a rant.
That is a bit of a rant, but that's okay. I mean, this vehicle has been designed with great flexibility in mind. So you've got your bottle, I've got my cup in here. So this center console actually lifts up completely. And if you have the 6-seat variant, there's another one in between the second row seats, which means if you take this out, you literally can walk from the front row all the way to the back of the van, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And at the rear, there's this little shelf in this particular first edition variant that you can remove. It needs to be unscrewed.
Yeah, our DP said it's a bit more fiddly.
But it's got those little cute little cargo things as well.
Yeah.
But it's the little attention to detail things that I really like. So under the front passenger seat, the one I'm sitting in, there's a mains inverter.
That's really
It's
nice
not
stuff.
a powerful one. Like, it's not going to run like your whole house in an emergency, which is a bit of a shame. But it's enough to run like a little camp inductive hob or to power kids' electronics on the road. There are USB-C sockets in every door for every seat. I think the middle seat may not get one, but everyone else gets USB built in. And the reason it's in the door is because these center consoles can be removed. So they couldn't put anything electronic in here.
Yeah.
They did it in the doors. And then for the rear seats, it's in that rear panel by the rear window. Now, the rear quarter windows don't open. These windows, sliding doors on both sides, they do slide out and open. And you know what? They don't cavitate. So, Kate, you noticed something about the doors as well.
I did, and obviously this would cavitate and probably not something that you really want to be doing driving down the freeway. In fact, I would say it's something you do not want to be doing driving down the freeway. But you can open the side doors and drive, which is very nice. I mean, you're not going to be wanting to drive fast, but if you're doing marathon support, something like that,
Yep.
this is great.
And it's also great if you want to have a camera vehicle,
Yes.
because a lot of channels actually use minivans for filming because of the sliding doors. So they can open the doors, they can have someone sat in the second row with a camera low down. We don't have that. And I know this is a super niche market. We had a chat over the weekend, my wife and I think it spilled into our official work chat as well, about how this would actually make a better camera rig vehicle than the F-150 Lightning that's driving behind us right now because of these sliding doors. That said, I don't know how we would get the cables from the hitch back into the cabin. So that would be a different problem to solve. We just stopped and switched, and I'm driving over the Bridge of the Gods, which is quite noisy because it's a metal bridge. If you're not based in North America, you might find it bizarre that we have bridges over here that are basically metal and nothing else on it. But that's fairly normal in this part of the world.
Uncommon.
And so we're now in Washington State. We just crossed over from Oregon into Washington, and we were halfway through a conversation about the tow hitch, but I just want to acknowledge something, because I always assumed that people figured this out, but apparently not everyone did. We don't always film our reviews in order. So sometimes we do our conclusion first and then our intro, and we drive two different places, and while we're driving we film the in-car bit, which is what we did today. So we actually filmed our conclusion first, because Kate had had a chance to drive by the time we set that up. And we just stopped to film our intro, which is also why our hair looks terrible.
Yeah.
Because it was very windy.
We have a kind of time limit today, so I don't have time to get my makeup crew, which is me, to redo my hair, so apologies.
So where were we? We were talking about the retractable tow hitch, right?
Yeah. It's not gonna be like, you're not gonna be towing 10,000 pounds like you definitely wouldn't with a Cybertruck, because it might break. But you can tow like little trailers. You can tow probably a camper trailer if you wanted, something like that.
This is a glorious road, and we chose this route. It's not really very much in the way of twisties, but we talked about twisty handling earlier. But this is kind of what I always think of when I think of a Volkswagen microbus, right? This is your stereotypical hootle along at 50 miles an hour, enjoy the weather, enjoy the scenery. This is gorgeous.
Take it from stop to stop, where you set up your camp, you have a nice little period of time there, and then you move on and you go see the United States.
the parts of the United States that you're allowed to go.
Well,
see.
yeah, I mean, for us, it's the West Coast.
I mean, for us, it's literally touring Oregon or Washington or California. But luckily, those states are large enough that you could have a very nice couple of weeks touring around in a Volkswagen microbus, which is really what the ID Buzz is. We haven't really talked much about the control surfaces yet, so let's talk about that.
So in terms of control surfaces, at the moment, it is still shipping with these capacitive controls, which, as we know, I am not a huge fan of, nor are you.
I'm not a fan of them either, no.
Yes, it does have some little divots here in the front of this head unit, which allow you to do the basics of volume control and a little bit of climate control. Mm-hmm. But anything else, you're going to be looking at this screen. And I think that's not a great idea, or you're going to be using one of the capacitive surfaces elsewhere in the vehicle.
And you know, Kate, for the first time in my life, I really miss having a knob to just grab and twist to change the volume.
Absolutely. It definitely is something that you wouldn't think you would miss.
No.
No.
This is the only real application of having a knob, though, is to make it louder or quieter.
Yeah, the volume control.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Otherwise, it does have Volkswagen's usual software, which has come on in leaps and bounds. Let's be fair. From their first
However,
version,
it is still the worst bit of this vehicle. We tried using the Hello ID function. So this has got voice command, right? So you can use a wake word, which is normally either OK or hello, and then ID. You can change that wake word, and then you can interact with the vehicle using natural language. At least that's what's supposed to happen. I tried navigating to my home yesterday using this, and I gave it the full address and the zip code, and then it was like, you have to say United States, and then it gave me some weird error and never actually followed through with the directions. If I stopped the bus, parked up, and then entered it using the mapping feature on here, it worked perfectly. It just couldn't deal with a dictated address, and I don't know if it was my accent or anything else.
I can't understand your accent.
But I watched it as it put it through, and it did actually hear every word I said correctly. It just couldn't then grok that was an address I wanted it to go to, even when I said navigate to.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
That is weird. And actually, while we're on the subject of software, we should mention this vehicle is currently in the middle of a recall because it is still displaying the European failed brake symbol. Warning light.
Right.
If the brakes fail.
Right.
They have not.
So right now this does display the European one. Ironically, it had just got off a recall. And one of the reasons why we've been rushing around with this all week, ironically, we've actually got the most footage of any vehicle we've ever had. But this review, we've actually got a slightly shorter time than normal because it was in the dealership and it has to go to an event later today in about 3 hours time. So we're trying to rush through to finish the review, and it already has another software recall.
Like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking.
Yes, yeah. So it displays the red ISO symbol instead of the word brake, which is the American one,
Because Americans can't understand symbols? Oh, right, yeah. There was that incident not so long ago. Got it. So if we ignore the fact that, everything is capacitive touch buttons, which means you end up activating or deactivating things, the actual stalks are lovely. The gear controller is on the right-hand side. It's your standard Volkswagen ID affair. You move it twice to go into simulated engine braking. There's not a single pedal on this, which I find disappointing.
Yeah, I always want single pedal, and I think that's one of the things that will probably develop as more people get used to having EVs, that they will want single pedal, and maybe it'll come as a software update at some point in the future.
I hope so, because I think single pedal driving is really important for accessibility moving forwards. I think being able to use single pedal driving is actually a more chill way of driving.
I actually think, to an extent, particularly for people raised on gaming, it's a more intuitive way of controlling a vehicle.
Yep.
I think that the way we've learned is going to fade out, in the same way that, you know, we don't teach people to drive at 10 and 2, and we don't teach people to rev match when they're shifting down, and all these things have gone by the wayside. I think eventually the brake pedal will be the emergency brake, and that's what people will use it for.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, this has an electronic parking brake. And let's talk about the bump. Lovely suspension.
It is.
Lovely suspension.
Remarkably flat.
It reminds me of the Audi's suspension. The Audi Q8 had that same kind of fairly flat handling of suspension. It's not quite as refined as the Audi. It's bigger. It's a bigger vehicle. But it's very well done. And coming into these corners, right, I'm doing 50, which is the recommended max speed for these corners, and it's just flat.
It is.
And I think that's partly because the ID Buzz has different size wheels, front and rear.
Yeah.
So the rear wheels are fatter and broader than the front wheels, which gives you that wonderful ability to have a very tight turning circle, but then also to be able to put that power down when you need it. It should be said, I've only spent a little bit of time with the all-wheel drive variant, but even the all-wheel drive still has great steering response.
I think the other thing is, particularly in this one, it's a rear-wheel drive, and it behaves like a rear-wheel drive. So
yes.
It will tuck in a little if you give it a bit of a nudge in a corner. So if you start thinking, oh, I've misjudged this, you can get out of
and
sticky situation.
Even the all-wheel drive is rear bias.
Yeah, it has about 1/4 the torque at the front as it does at the rear.
Which means that you get that extra power and torque to tuck you into corners, but certainly not, it's not gonna turn this into an off-roading beast.
No, and you really wouldn't expect it to be. So it's really a vehicle that very much meets its expectations in exactly the way that I hoped it would. Mm-hmm. That's the thing.
And let's talk about the driving position for a second, because anybody who spent any time driving the original bus will know that it wasn't the most ergonomic of vehicles.
No, it kind of drove like a truck.
The steering wheel was basically almost parallel to the ground.
Yeah.
And you kind of sat a little bit up, and the pedals, you almost put your foot down on the pedals rather than pushed against them. That's what I remember. This is obviously a little bit better. It's got that play and pause button on the pedals, which I absolutely hate. I hate the nomenclature of play and pause. It should be play and stop, right? Making the brake pedal pause makes absolutely no sense to my neurospicy brain.
Okay. I mean, to me it works, but that's, different people, different brains.
Right, okay. That's fair enough.
Because I'm just like, I'm stopping for a second in this, but no, then I'm going to go somewhere.
Right. There are some features that are worth mentioning in terms of control surfaces that I really appreciate. The first one is there's a button on the left-hand side of the steering column that is your light cluster. It also gives you access to your heated front and rear windows. And you have the ability to turn on the lights in bad weather with one button, which is lovely.
Yeah, it turns on all the lights.
It's lovely. I really think all cars should have it, and I default to turning that on. Now, I hope that there is a setting somewhere in the Volkswagen setup I know there isn't one here, but there's probably one hidden in like the diagnostic system that allows you to default to lights always being on. Because as a biker, that's the thing I like. You know, I want my lights to be on all the time. Thank you very much. Safety first. Also, if you turn the lights on, you get this wonderful light up front logo.
Yes.
Which is very cute.
It is very cute.
The other thing that I want to point out, being a European designed and built vehicle, this has parking lights.
Yeah.
Do we want to tell people what that is? Because I don't think everyone would know.
I think it's such a useful feature. So it allows you to leave on the lights on the side of the vehicle if you're parking at night. And
Right.
it just leaves on the side that is facing traffic.
It just leaves on the marker lights, so very, very low power drain. You're not going to drain your battery.
Especially these days of LEDs.
In LEDs, right? But it's just a little marker to go, oi, I'm here. Don't hit me.
Yeah, please don't hit me.
Now, obviously, in North America, that's not so much of a problem, unless you're maybe out east. If you lived in one of the East Coast older towns, it might be a useful feature because they have a lot more on-street parking. But it just serves as an additional insurance policy against you being hit while you're parked on the street. I think it's great. The other thing that's worth calling out here, Kate, is this is phenomenally easy to look out of.
Yeah, it's a giant glass box.
Especially if you have the version, you know, the first edition, which comes with this photochromic roof. So you just do this slidey thing here and it changes it so it's opaque or translucent, depending on which way you go. My wife has very sensitive pupils. She's got that weird thing where she's very, very sensitive to light. And no, it's not called being a vampire. Although that would be cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, she struggles with massive glass roofs, right? And we were driving in it yesterday and I said, hey, how is the light level? She said, no, it's really good.
Yeah, no, with
when it's closed.
Photochromic over. Because I mean, you'll see I quite often wear sunglasses when we're filming just because I can't deal. But this has been very, very pleasant. And it's nice and easy to control, which is...
Yep.
If you're not going to have a screen, then having photochromic is very good.
Very, very good. And, you know, just another note with the visibility and the interior design of this, we should probably talk about the ID light, which is a light bar that sits just behind the glass and it's kind of right in your field of view. This particular version of the ID Buzz doesn't have any head-up displays or anything, but it has this ID light, and if you're using navigation, it actually pulses in the direction you need to be going at your next turn. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice feature. And I have to say, look, I haven't had this vehicle at night, but our DP has. And when I got in, they were very exuberant about the nature of the cabin lighting.
It's very customizable.
It's very customizable. They said that it's the best cabin lighting of any vehicle that they've had. Mm-hmm. And obviously they've had pretty much all the same vehicles that we've had.
Yeah, we've all had high-end, luxury cars. I will note that our navigation has kind of given up the ghost here. I wonder why that is. Let's find out. There we go.
It's sorted itself out.
It's sorted itself out.
On the subject of the interior, it does, of course, have multi-way adjustable seats in a variety of different forms.
Which you can adjust through the touchscreen display, which is interesting.
You can. You also have the more traditional electronic controls on the side, and both front driver and passenger seats have 2 memory positions. Yep. Which is very good.
And you were very excited about massaging seats.
I always like a massage seat.
I think they're horrible. They make seats less comfortable and they just make my back more painful.
Whereas I find that they're really good and they help with my back pain. So, because I'm ancient and made of dust.
The audio system is pretty good. It's a Harman Kardon system. It can pump. It's got a good virtual surround sound system where you can have a more stereo pick, which is standard for most cars these days, which is why I didn't even really bring it up. CarPlay, Android Auto, good job.
Which is definitely worth mentioning, since we're in an era where a lot of vehicles are choosing to make you pay for that.
Yes, so it's standard. Interestingly, the steering column is manually adjustable. I forgot to mention that earlier. Tons of pockets, absolutely everywhere. Storage everywhere.
So much storage.
And I can see people, I bet people are already designing 3D printed doodads and whatnots for this front area, because there's just got so much potential. Talking of which, in Europe, there are a couple of companies that now convert these to proper Westphalia-style pop-up camper vans. You can get seats that swivel, so the seats can be, rotated so that you can face the back.
Like captain chairs.
Captain chairs that rotate. They don't come like that from the factory, but you can add a feature.
Aftermarket.
I don't believe there's anybody over here in North America that's doing it, but definitely in Europe you can get that. You can also get conversions in Europe to raise the roof. And I know that some of our North American viewers will be like, well, it's not available here. And I go, yeah, but we have an audience around the world. So if you are in Europe, you can convert this to a camper van really easily. There are also little kitchen add-ons that you can do. And, if I had the money, I'd own one.
Yeah.
And that's rare. This is definitely one of those cars I don't want to give back.
Yeah, I mean, most vehicles that we drive, I'm pretty much happy to give back. I'm like, that was nice. Okay.
And you get back into your car and go, oh yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. And it's not like I want to drive this every day, although I wouldn't object to doing so. But for what I personally have planned for the other bit of my work life that isn't Transport Evolved for the future, this would be great. For anyone who wants to go touring and camping, and that's something that I love doing, this would be great. Unfortunately, it's also not that cheap.
It's definitely not in the affordable segment, but I think this is definitely a vehicle you should keep your eye on if you're interested in one, and wait a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, when they start coming off sale and used, then it's something I might consider.
And I think if you're in Europe, definitely for your business, they're a lot cheaper in Europe. More battery options in Europe, more trim options. And I am kind of worried that Volkswagen may ultimately pull this out of the market and this becomes kind of a limited edition. We sold it for a while and we didn't sell enough, so we got out, or we felt pressure not to sell it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see with the current political climate that, one, it's going to be very much more expensive once tariffs kick in and have their impact. And two, there isn't the encouragement from the federal government to transition to cleaner energy.
Nope.
Why bother with the hassle of bringing it here when you're already picking a fairly limited market? Because they're not trying to sell this to every consumer. They're trying to sell to a pretty niche group of people.
And I think if you've got the money and you remember the original, and people have come up to me so many times that I've been driving this going, oh wow, that's great, I want one so badly.
We had 3 in the time that it took us to set up to film our closing.
Yeah. And, filming rollers with this, so many thumbs up, so many people excited to see it.
Yeah.
It just makes people smile. It makes you smile driving it. It makes you smile seeing it. I don't think I've ever seen our DP as happy behind the wheel of an EV.
No.
As they were behind the wheel of this.
Yeah, I have to agree. I have. And also, RDP spammed our channel, our personal work chat, with pictures of it going, look at it here, look at it here.
And Ashley, I'm going to, they may remove this from the video. Do not remove this from the final review, okay? The wonderful montage that you saw at the beginning was actually produced the day after they gave me the keys They had it for like 4 days, 5 days, and then they gave me the keys over the weekend. And they were like, do you need my computer? Because our studio edit suite, I have a desktop machine, but they have a laptop because they often have to be on the move. And they were like, can I take my laptop home and all the edit gear? And I'm like, well, sure. And they're like, well, I've already transferred all the folders, all the nearly 4 terabytes of footage that we filmed for this onto a jump drive so I can work at it over this weekend. It's a project for me. And I'm like, don't really want you to work over the weekend. And then yesterday they surprised us with the beautiful montage that you've seen.
It is, I think...
That is the power of this vehicle.
I think it is a love letter to this vehicle because they liked it so much.
Yes. You and I have a list, Kate, of vehicles that we cannot wait to hand back. Vehicles that were like, you know, if I got one of these as a courtesy car while my car was in the shop, I'd be okay with it.
It's fine.
And then we have a list of vehicles that, as the wonderful Chelsea Sexton joked, we want to kind of hide it and disguise it and hide it in a mine, which is what she wanted to do with the original EV1. I've driven this before, right? I went to the launch, and at the launch event, I was like, this is a great vehicle and it's too expensive. I think I undersold that. I think it's actually the best electric Volkswagen that Volkswagen has made.
Yeah, I mean, I've never driven the E-Up, which I think would be an entertaining little city car, but this is unreasonably good.
It is. And look, I have a soft spot for Volkswagens, right? I used to have a super rare 1985 Volkswagen Golf City Strimmer. I know I bring it up every time, but I loved that thing. It was my wedding car. But this is even better than that. It's, I don't know. Normally when a car company brings an icon back, I get this pang of,
Oh, they're gonna screw it up. And they
Mini.
usually do.
Mini, Fiat 500, right?
Yeah. Like, they're all
They're
good.
good.
They're good cars, but they are not the icon.
They're not the icon. And so I was driving this up, so we're filming this east of Portland. We normally film west of Portland, but because we got some of the B-roll next to Vista House, and this is iconic, this is where we filmed the ID4 review, I was like, hey, let's all come to the east side. And so I drove this over to our DP's house yesterday, coming over the I-5 bridge from Oregon into Washington. Believe it or not, and I wish I had a camera rolling, I did not, a original bay window, orange bay window bus came up beside me, and the owner was absolutely losing it about how cool this was. We kind of waved at each other and smiled lots, and then we drove over the I-5 in convoy together.
Yeah.
And it just felt like, this is the vehicle you own if you're a bit lonely. This is the vehicle you own if you're a sociable person and you like talking to people. Or perhaps you're introverts like us and you need experience and practice talking to people.
When I was a kid, I went to Woodcroft Oak because, you know, hippie. And we would go out into the Lake District, and invariably one of the leaders would take us in their camper van, and it was either the shagged out Transit or it was one of the Chris's camper vans, which were Volkswagen buses. And so I have really fond memories of it. And so when we saw this, I was like, I'm gonna down cold medicine. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna drive this because this is the second time I'm gonna miss it otherwise. And it's exactly like, it just gives you those vibes.
So I used to go and do conservation work as a kind of I think I started doing it when I was 8, and I carried on doing it until I was 12, until we moved. There used to be a volunteer group that would go to the Ted Ellis Wildlife Reserve, I suppose, in Norfolk. and his late wife was still running the reserve after he'd died. You would go and you would volunteer, and one of the volunteers drove a bus, and he used to pick me up in either his bug or his bus, and it was normally his bus. And I remember fond memories. So let's acknowledge, you and I have fond memories of the original bus.
We both have a bit of a thing for Volkswagens.
We like Volkswagens. But let's talk briefly, I know we did in the review, about the driving dynamics. This has no business driving this well and being this large.
No. So as I mentioned earlier, I was sick running up to this review. And to make sure that I had opinions about this vehicle, because normally I get a whole weekend with a car, and this time I didn't have time to do that. So RDP took me out and showed me some nice twisty roads to go and play on. I took it on the freeway, I had a bit of a drive. It's fun.
Yeah.
It can't be fun. It's a minivan.
And I feel like I need to say thank you to you for being sick. Because normally I get the vehicle the least of all of us, right? I get it maybe for half a day when I drive it up to you. I got this all weekend because you were unwell and unable to take over the driving for a bit. So yesterday I took this out to Tillamook, which is about 70, 80 miles from where I live, on the Oregon coast. It's a local dairy known for its ice cream and all of its dairy products. And I picked this t-shirt up with the Tillamook original
just coincidentally happens
bus.
to be appropriate.
And it's not quite the right orange, but it's, it's Oregon with, it felt the vibe. And so I couldn't resist, right? We parked this up outside the front of the Tillamook Dairy, who, by the way, not only have DC fast chargers in the form of superchargers across the way, but they actually have level 2 destination chargers, both NACS and I would call normal J1772 chargers. So we parked up, we plugged in, so many people came over and talked to us. And driving up into the mountains and back was a pleasure, even on twisty roads. That particular road out to the coast is so bumpy right now because it's had landslides and things, and they haven't improved the road properly, they haven't resurfaced it. But coming back, up in the mountains where I live, there are a lot of unimproved roads. And driving up to my house, up some pretty steep inclines on gravel roads, this struggled. Like the back end was like, I'm gonna go sideways. And if you put any more power down, I'm gonna spin my wheels.
Yeah.
That's the only major criticism I have of it, other than the stupid capacitive buttons.
Which we always
complain about. But for some reason in this Buzz, it doesn't feel as bad as it has in other vehicles I've driven with it.
Yeah.
There are some quirks and features about this, like the fact that when you open the charge port door, you can't open one of the side doors all the way back because it's obviously trying to make sure that it doesn't smash into the charge port door. The doors sometimes won't open if you've hit the lock button. I would rather that if you have the remote control and you try and open it using the remote control, but inside the van it's already locked, it won't open. So you're gonna have to get in the front door, turn the van on, and then unlock it and then slide it. That's a bit of an annoyance. But other than that, planted, sure-footed, 3 miles per kilowatt hour.
I don't really understand how it manages that, because it is a brick. It is absolutely a brick. And it's a remarkably quiet brick.
It is, even at 70.
Yeah.
But I mean, 3 miles per kilowatt hour is what I averaged going out to the coast and back yesterday, and that included a mountain pass or two. And I wasn't driving hard. I mean, I was driving at 55, 60, but let's be honest. That's the sweet spot for this, 55 miles an hour. You can drive faster, but all right, we both like it. I'm frustrated it's not available as a cargo van over here.
Yeah.
In fact, we do consulting work on the side. And one of our clients just last week, as this arrived, went, we'd like to buy an ID Buzz and get it converted. And I'm like, well, you can remove the rear seats.
Yeah.
You could probably remove the second row seats, but you're not able to get a commercial version over here.
Yeah, I just genuinely find it really bizarre in a way, because there aren't many medium, small delivery vehicles that are electric that are available in the States at all. And this suits so many businesses. You could do small scale deliveries like kitchens and things like that, where you're not doing a big bulk thing. You could have gardeners, you could have bookshops, you could have bakeries. Bakeries would love this.
Yeah.
And
dog walking services.
yeah,
Can you imagine this as a dog-friendly bus? I don't want to make the illusion, but I'm going to. Scooby-Doo,
yeah,
right? You could turn this into a Scooby Snacks dog walking service or something like that. Or
And it's also bizarre because it's sold by Volkswagen Commercial in the US, and yet not as a commercial.
So Volkswagen were really clear at the launch. They don't think there's a market over here for this as a commercial vehicle. They're targeting a different market of buyer in North America than they are in Europe. Because in Europe, you can get the Buzz as a long wheelbase, short wheelbase. This is the long wheelbase version. You can get it as a commercial vehicle or as a people carrier. This is obviously the 7-seat version. The 6-seat version is a little bit more plush. The all-wheel drive version of this, though, if you go for the top range, all-wheel drive with all of the seats, all of the interior comforts and doodads, you're nearly at the same price as a lot of other more luxury marques. And at that point, as a proposition, you're not buying this because you want a luxury vehicle, you're buying it because you want a buzz.
yeah,
When we were filming rollers for this, a guy went past in what he self-described as a ratty pickup truck. Old, diesel, smelly, noisy, lifted pickup truck, right? He went past and he basically threw the sideways peace sign as we went past.
yeah.
And we parked up, we started taking photos, and then he came back. And I was like, oh God, what's gonna happen? And he was a really nice guy.
Yeah.
He has owned many buses. He wants one of these like straight away, and he wanted to just geek out about it. He was
Yeah.
lovely. I'm afraid I've forgotten your name. If you're watching this, hello. And when I kind of talked about the price, he didn't seem too off-put by it.
Yeah.
You know, for 58 starting, I can definitely get behind that. Closer to 70,
It's a tricky proposition, I think.
but you know, to finish, I figured out who the target buyer is for this.
Go on.
Do you know there's in a car company of late that's attracted a lot of hate in the media?
There is one particular one, yeah.
Boycotts outside dealerships,
Yeah.
people making references to the vehicles by using derogatory terms that may or may not have connections to World War II. And people who own those vehicles have been going out of their way to rebadge their cars as a
Yes.
sign of protest.
And,
right?
and quite a lot of them have been selling them. The market value seems to have dropped.
Yes. So this is for that owner, the person who has sold said car and has become fed up with people yelling at them, cursing at them, flipping them off. And I want to be clear, I do not condone violence against owners of those cars, because most of the people purchased those cars before things went really downhill. But if you are someone who's owned one of those cars for a while, regardless of which model it was, this is the car for you to kind of reintegrate into society and to make new friends, because people will come up to you and be nice to you.
Yes, they will. Yeah, they'll come up to you and be excited.
And I think that's good for the soul.
It is.
And I think that's ultimately where this vehicle is. It's good for the soul. Come on, let's do some more driving. I don't want to give it back. Do you know any good places we can hide this?
Let me just have a little bit of a think.
So fierce. Thanks for joining us today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them in our Discord chat room, on our Patreon page down below, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon or Blue Sky. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They're part of the massive community of supporters who make this channel possible, helping us through Patreon and YouTube, covering our bills, paying our team, and helping us to remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. We've got options available across a wide range of different price points, starting from just $1.50 US a month. A massive welcome to our newest supporters: Bass, Mind Sturmer, Dan Morton, DX Watt, There's Jer, Magnetar Employer, Ron THX1138, Jonas V, John Leonard, Joe Weekend Dog Dad, Yalfini, David Hardin, Enzoticus, Ed Runyon, Beth S, Mitch Rassner, Brad Crusshorn, Leighton, Dennis, Stephen Beetle, Albert Beatty, Peterson, Ja, Todd Fraser, Rick B, Paul, Andrew Deet, Tim Benford, John Salmons, Sag Gibson, JTPDX, Tyler Walker, Gary Dean Mercer Clark, Roboman410, and John Galley. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your moment of fame, and you can even give membership to someone else. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at, not the time being, address also below. You'll also find links to our swag store, and if you are someone who has to shop on Amazon, please consider using our affiliate link so we get the commission, not Jeff Bezos. So we can continue to focus on making our content even better and reduce creator burnout. We're being a little freer with our release days this year, but plan on dropping new content every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday on our main channel, plus something on Sunday over on Transport Evolve Take 2. If you want more, the algorithm that hates us thinks you should watch this video, but this one is one of our favourites. Be awesome, be kind, be intentional, and don't forget to resist. Keep evolving.